Well, we're seeing you now in the movie you wrote and star in Neon Lights. Where did the idea for the film come from?
Well, it really just depends who you ask, really. But
I'm asking you.
but you know, in about August of 2019, I was coming home from a film festival, HBO Film Festival in New York, and went through this really eerie town in the northern part of the state of New York, and I got this really cool sense of writing something that was on a remote state, and that's where the original inception came from. Then you fast forward to about March and April of 2020, where I finally met Ruzbe, who directed the film. And at that juncture, we looked at the screenplay and I said, Ruz, I think I have something really cool that I feel like we could make during the pandemic. But at that moment, we had to distill that entire project down for obvious reasons. I mean, productions during the pandemic were next to impossible. The original script had a multitude of different casts, a large scope of background, and multiple locations that just were inherently impossible during the pandemic. So at that point, we had distilled the story, created this psychological thriller. But one of the big components that we kind of implemented while working with Bruce simultaneously was the component of mental health, and really showcasing that. And so that's where really Neon Lights Inception came from.
It's just such an incredible film. Did you always, though, have yourself in mind to star as Clay in it? Or was this just something that you came up with last minute because you had to work out those logistics post pandemic?
Absolutely. So you know, I've always said that I was an actor first that resorted to writing and producing in order to give myself an opportunity. It's such a challenging world that we live in, and not just in film and television, but just in any space, whether it be entertainment through the print world or the magazine or just anything in any endeavor. And we always have to find ways to give ourselves opportunities. So when I wrote Neon Lights, in combination with any other screenplay that I've ever written, I sometimes always write myself in, whether it's a co-lead, supporting, or in this case, the lead role. But when the pandemic had hit, raising money was just next to impossible. Nobody wanted to give you any money because who would want to part ways with money when their entire industry and companies are shut down? So at that moment, Ruzbe had already read it. We were already working on the project, and we had looked at several other big names, if you will, to play the role of Clay. And I was going to resort to playing Benny in the film. But it was actually Ruzbe that said, "I won't direct it if you're not the lead." So he gave me the level of confidence that I needed and the surety that I needed to play a role that, firstly, is so challenging. I mean, I've heard somebody say this is basically a breakout role for a veteran or experienced actor, and you're doing it on the first jump or at the first go as a lead, not simultaneously while writing and producing. There's so many different levels of lack of confidence that I had and surged through, but Ruzbe really just inspired me and continued to push me forward. And we really started working on the character in August and September, 2 months prior to even getting to filming, and he gave me the confidence I needed to really get there.
We talked about you writing this, you produced this, you star in it. Why not direct it?
Because then what would Ruse do? I'll tell you the God honest truth about why. I mean, I directed a short film, but why I haven't. A lot of individuals have asked me why I haven't directed yet. Um, I think the first reason as to why I haven't directed is simply because of the fact that I'm just so in love with acting. I've done all of this to basically give myself an opportunity to act. And now, having had tasted that opportunity and now having a lot more opportunities towards doing different roles and diverse roles, that's what I really want to explore and challenge myself in that space, in that facet of film and television as a medium. But directing, it's such an extraordinary ability. I think being a director is one of the most challenging facets in the industry, just because you have to take so many different aspects, combine it together, and the world is just so critical of directors and what you
Yes.
put out as a world. Because at the end of the day, whether you like the movie or not, you're not really going at Dana Abraham and saying, "Hey, man, this movie is X, Y, and Z," or whatever, because you're going at the director. And I think you have to be really deeply rooted in the foundation of your level of confidence in that medium to be able to do it. And I'm just not there yet. However, come back to me when you and I have a conversation 2, 3 years from now when I acted and wrote and directed a film. I'll tell you a whole different thing.
We discussed how you got to star in it, but how hands-on then were you when it came to casting the roles?
um, Rusbe and I worked in tandem because there was only such a handful of roles remaining. I mean, in August, early August of 2020, we basically started having conversation with Kim Coates' team. At that same time, we'd already written in Brenna Coates into the film. So we locked in Brenna and then we locked in Kim and myself. So realistically, there's only, 4 or 5 roles left to go. Casting directors weren't really that keen on doing a low budget in their minds independent thriller at that time. So we basically put up the breakdown ourselves. We brought on a casting associate into Red Hill Entertainment, and so Ruse and I watched over 1,500 self tapes. The reason why we watched so many, and I know that that's not the norm. The reason why we did is, one, I wanted to see what a lot of other actors were doing, a lot of colleagues of mine from that world, and we wanted to honor them and their work. And then number two, it's because we didn't want to miss anybody. To give you an example, we had already locked somebody in almost contractually for Blair. And we had watched all the self tapes, and almost the last one was Erica Swayze, who then ended up getting the role. So we were in a superior way, very hands on. I was very hands on, and Ruse and I pretty much work in tandem across the board. But he's very forthcoming when it comes to a co-creative, loving space. So I was hands on with him pretty much on every facet.
Well, let's talk about filming then. This is such an intense, it's a horror thriller. And you're acting, you're producing, you're writing.
Yeah.
When it came to the dialogue, though, were you very insistent on set that things be by the book, or did you allow much room for people to work their own sort of comfortable to feel comfortable with the dialogue on their own? Or, as I mentioned, was this something that you really were a stickler about? These are the words, I really love them the way they are, let's just kind of do that? Or maybe you did like, okay, let's do by the book first, and then maybe I'll give you a little bit room to um try your own hand at it.
Absolutely. It really just actually ties back into your previous question about casting and how intertwined I was with that aspect of the production. For me, just as a human being, the one thing I've learned, I've grown up with my single mother and my 3 sisters, and we massively play a role in each of our lives, integrated into one another, to understand that you cannot accomplish anything alone. All in all, to say I couldn't be here talking to you without my publicist, Amira.
Takes a village.
Always, always. And I wouldn't be here without Amira today. And your audience wouldn't meet me without you. All in all, to say, despite the credits that I have on screen, there's such an immense amount of people that have helped me get to where I'm at today. At Red Hill Entertainment, my business partner Q, Jazz Brar, who's our counsel and also our producer on set as soon as I transition. So being so hands-on and involved with the casting with Rusbe, the one thing that we always thought, and Rusbe will always say this as well, is that you know your characters are developed as soon as you get into casting, and once you cast that individual play that role, it's
Mm-hmm.
now theirs. And for me, I love the collaborative space. I know that Stephen Tracy, who played James in the film, came in and had several ideas that we actually implemented into the movie.
Oh,
I
cool.
noticed that it wasn't going to be that much more costly to be able to implement his ideas and vision into the film, so we did. Even in our previous latest film, 100 Lives, that releases later this year, a lot of the cast came to me with ideas on dialogue, even scene developments, things that they wanted to implement into the movie that they felt like their character needed. And I feel like the medium of film and television is such a collaborative space that if you try to squeeze it down to what you think your vision is, and only your vision is the right way to go, you're going to have a really quick turnaround on your way out of the industry. That's my purview. And so for me, I always want people to feel when they work with me that they have that collaborative freedom, because otherwise I'm just creating stories just for myself. And I don't think that's the meaning of what we do. I think we created for a vast audience. And when you give somebody that love and trust, they should be able to add to that product as well.
There's so many intense and thrilling moments throughout the entire movie. Plus, you're already probably at a 10 on adrenaline because this is your movie. How did you shake off a long day of shooting?
Well, wow, that nobody's asked me that. You know, oh gosh, I think whiskey, to be honest. No, I would come home. Spirituality was a new thing for me at that moment. I'm now 2 years into meditating and being very cognizant of the spirituality around me and just in this world, the universe, and everything. It was at that moment really new. However, because it was so new, I did a deep dive into it, meditating before going to set, coming home and trying to unwind in a really positive way. I would end every single day because they were really hectic. Some of the days I was shooting 12 hours straight just because it was me that day, and it was all emotional roller coasters, all internal. Me in this really small, tight space of a room and playing out all those scenes by myself. I'd come home and just really unwind and just really reflect on the day and prepare for the next one. And I would have that drink and then go to sleep. And I didn't have too many opportunities specifically through production to delve into, oh my gosh, this is so difficult, or etc. Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and still do to this day, that I'm a blessed young man. The pandemic was going on and a lot of people didn't have a job or a career, and prior to the pandemic I was a bartender, so for me to even have a space and a career finally, and to be going to work every single day, whether it's 12 or 14-hour days, I felt like I was a very fortunate person. And to be able to go and do a role that's so challenging so early in my career at this point, I didn't really look back and think, oh my gosh, this is one of the hardest days of my life. How am I going to prepare for tomorrow? I was just riding the adrenaline, as you said. I was on a 10. And then I'd get to the days and just to see everybody working towards the same goal, like I would hit 12 out of 10 on adrenaline, and I just
Sure.
make it through. And it's just so interesting and so fun. And looking back at it now that the movie's released, I still have that same level of gratitude because, again, how many people made movies during the pandemic, and then I, of all people, got to do that. Like, that's such a beautiful thing.
You mentioned those tight situations in that room. Were those A, some of the most challenging to film, and B, the most memorable scenes you filmed? Or were there other moments throughout the movie that really stand out to you, whether they be personally important to you or ones that, like I said, challenged you the most to film?
It's interesting. You would think a film like Neon Lights would be hyper challenging because of the dynamicism of the character, coupled with obviously the heightened challenges of just shooting during the pandemic, specifically the second wave. But it was actually the latest role in 100 Lives where I play, a drug dealing bartender. That was such a challenging role for me. I have no idea why, but it was because it felt like I was playing more.
You're a
Uh,
bartender.
yeah, I was playing closer to the truth than I was anything else. But to answer your question even more specifically, I didn't find it so challenging to shoot Neon Lights, even in the tight quarters and space, because the team was just so phenomenal. The cinematographer and camera op, Dimitri Lopatin, was just so skilled. Rusbe and he would go into the location pretty much 6 months out, and they looked at the blueprints and they would measure out the wall size and everything. They knew exactly where the dolly would go. They knew well in advance. They knew how to give me the space. And then conversely, if I remember Aaron Spicer, the acting coach in Los Angeles that I've worked with years ago, he had said something really fruitful. He said, if you want to work and as a performer and just be in your own world, go do theater. But if you want to be a performer in a medium where you need to work with the cinematography, the location, and all the different faculties of making a film, go be an actor for on screen. And so that's the big thing for me. It's like no matter where you put me, whether it's an independent production where it's a tighter quarter, or you're putting me on a studio where everything's in a large scale magnitude, it's my job as a performer to bring out the best performance and not think so much about the variables. And I just wanted to have that mentality and mindset right away, right from the jump, because that is then the foundation that I set myself up for moving forward to different productions, whether they're large or small or whatever it may be. Um, Having said that, Neon Lights is going to be hands down the most memorable project I've ever done. Firstly, because it's my first project. Secondly, because it's during the pandemic. Third, because it was such a challenging role, and whether or not I get to do something similar, It's just not something you'll ever forget, you know.
That's a perfect segue into my next question is what did you personally take away from your time here working on Neon Lights, whether it's on camera or behind the camera?
Well, I learned that if I had a redo in life, I would have stayed in law school. No, no, I just, gosh, all of it was just so fantastic. I mean, you reflect back on it, there's just so many highs and so many lows, and seldom are you kind of like even keel as a stoic would be. Um, I really have thoroughly enjoyed the process of making the film. Everything from the inception of the script to the hunting of capital to even the way we worked with Kim Coates' team, Gail Abrams, to lock him in and Brenna Coates. Acting was just such a phenomenal experience, and I'll never forget being number one on a call sheet and going up, even despite the vanity of it all. It's surreal to be number one on a call sheet. It's surreal to be the lead of a project, never mind one of the scope and caliber of Neon Lights. And then on top of that, producing it and having that narrative that we were able to make a film regardless of the scale of it during the pandemic. And then you fast forward, a year later when the movie's finally done and it's complete and it's ready for the world, striking a deal with Entertainment One, which is hands down one of the biggest distribution companies in the world. And then you fast forward again several months from that point, we're in publicity and several different interviews and on TV and then releasing on Apple and Prime and a world premiere in my hometown. Over 600 people show up, and then another screening in LA. Over 200 people show up to that. I mean, where can I really go and tell you honestly is one of my favorite because, and you can sit there, Jamie, and you can probably be like, yeah, I don't even know because you'd enjoy all of it. And I feel like a kid in a candy store when I really think about Neon Lights and more Skittles than anything because of all the different colors. But it's just I just really thoroughly enjoyed the entire process. And again, I really can't really pinpoint one thing that I specifically love, but I know that that entire film and project itself is something that I just always would cherish.
Well, I know that 100 Lies is, I think that's the next thing you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually, it stars Humberly Gonzalez, which is a friend of our publication,
Wow.
and Brandon McKnight, who's also now known for The Flash. You have some big names you're working on with this movie. What does that mean to you?
Well, so December had hit right after pandemic, or sorry, right after Neon Lights had finished, and I was like now coming down from this adrenaline, that 12 out of 10 I was telling you about. And Rob Racco is a friend of mine. I met him through a really close friend of mine that I boxed with for several years, Josh. And Rob and I were just talking about if we could do anything, we were riffing on ideas, what would we do? And we just wanted to tell our story from our truth, our perspective. Rob is a drummer that finally segued into the music world and is traveling and touring, and then he ends up in film and television, ends up on Riverdale for 3 seasons. And he was just talking about his experience and how difficult it was, and I was telling him about my experience and how difficult that was, and we basically came to 100 Lives. Then moving forward, Rusbe obviously directed that piece. We wanted the best Canadian cast. Sure, we could go after Americans, but we just felt like we're telling a Canadian story about the volatility of Toronto's music industry. Why not double down on Toronto stars and ones that are worldly, very much like Umberly, very much like Brandon McKnight, Stephen Tracy, Michael Xavier. I don't know if you know, brilliant performer. He just married Eddie Murphy's daughter, just on the cover of People's Magazine. Like these are, dude, we're Canadian and we're doing it. Simo Liu, you're talking about the girl from Scarborough. Like we're doing it. We're worldly.
Stephen
And so,
Tracy.
you know what I mean? And it's our time to shine. And so when we were filming that, we actually wrapped up production the first week of September of 2021. We're actually preparing to release that film over the course of the next several months into early 2023, January of 2023. And I just feel like a fortunate young man. And going into our next project, Black Cat, or Wife of Godson, we're doing a lot of great things, and I'm just really stoked about all the different variety of projects we have upcoming. And again, I feel like a blessed young man.
I mean, you started your life in Bangladesh, and here you are sharing the screen with big names and now creating your own projects that must be incredibly A, fulfilling to you, and B, you're making your mama proud.
Oh, I really appreciate you
You
saying
may not
that.
be a lawyer like
Yeah.
most moms want their children, or a doctor, but she's got to be pretty stoked about how great you're doing.
Well, my mom and my sisters are at the forefront of pretty much anything I do. They're yeah, I at the world premiere, I remember my mom's really difficult to please, not because she's a difficult woman, but think about it this way. So my dad abandoned us in 1997 in Canada. He had a whole nother family we didn't know about. So he took our passports and left. My mom was an artist. We came here for the International Women's Art Exhibit in Toronto. And so she sacrificed artistry, she sacrificed her love of anything she's ever wanted to accomplish in her life to raise three kids. You know what I mean? And so, what do you do to please somebody who's overcome so much adversity as single parent, single mother, a woman of all things, in a country, a foreign country with no help, no family, didn't speak English at that time, who raised three wonderful kids. My little sister starting her master's program in neuroscience at McGill University. My older sister works for Red Cross. The eldest one's in dentistry. How do you top that? You just can't. So to see my family at anything that I've ever done, to see my mother happy and proud, even in the glimpses of it, that means more to me than any sort of review, any sort of critic, any sort of check that I'll ever get, because she sacrificed everything for all of us, and to give her a little bit of happiness, whatever that is for from us and our end, that means more to me than anything else in the world for sure.
Well, you're a part of social media. You must be getting praise as well, not just from your family, but also from the online community as for Neon Lights. What kind of response have you been receiving online to the new movie that you just released here?
It ironically, it's been mixed. There's no lukewarm. It's either they hate it or they love it. But would you want anything else as a creative?
Exactly. I was just going to
Because if
say
you're in the
they're
middle,
talking about it. As long as they're talking about it, it means something.
absolutely. But nevertheless, the unilaterally, what I've received is praise for the accomplishment. And at the end of the day, whether you love a film or hate a film, whether you love a performance or do not, you always have to give your hats off to any individual that's just chasing after their dreams. And soon, Jamie, you'll start seeing a little bit more on a new campaign that we're really pushing. I know Amira is really working towards it with me. I'm really big on just chasing your dreams. At the end of the day, nobody here owes you anything in this world. By here, I mean presently, physically. Um, Outside of your parents who bring you into this world, and your mom who births you, nobody owes you anything. Casting directors don't owe you a job. Your agents don't owe you to get you into the rooms all the time because they have a job to do for their other clients, or any endeavor you're in, whether you're a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. I think the onus is always on you to create opportunities for yourself if they're not coming to you. The success there's a three doors. You're born into it, you inherit it, or you create it. And so for me, regardless of how the world perceives me or the praise that they give me, I try to stay at a level of humility to understand I'm going to be here and I'm going to be here. But if I can inspire one other person to go chase after their dreams because they saw me do it, because if I believe if I can do it, you can do it as well. I'm not anything special. I'm not an anomaly. I'm just a guy that followed in his own gut instincts and passions. Then that to me is a job well done. And when my presence in this world physically is over, hopefully there's another Dana, and then another Dana inspires the next one. And that to me is the ultimate goal of being in a community.
What would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of the wonderful work you do on our screens and maybe sometimes behind our bars?
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Old fashioned is my favorite drink if you'd ever like to buy me one.
Grab me a whiskey if that's not available, right? Or if no one knows how to
Yeah,
make the old fashioned for some,
exactly.
you'll settle for whiskey.
Exactly. Jameson. But I'd always say go create your own content. I think I just said that, and I said the importance of that. But where it really boils down to for me is that, and this is something that's newfound, so it's something that I really put faith in, is just love yourself. This world is tremendously, tremendously challenging. We're at an all time high of where I feel like there's a massive regression in community and politics and in every facet of human life. Negative news is we're inundated with it. And I think social media, for all the pluses of it, there's a lot of downsides. And so I think we get to a place of life where we start, questioning ourselves, our being, and what it is that's important to us. And so I think loving ourselves is such an important aspect, key aspect to a healthy lifestyle, because you cannot accomplish any dreams, you cannot accomplish any amount of successes that you envision for yourself, whether it's a 3 year plan, 5 year, or what have you, without loving yourself first, because the foundation needs to be
Amen.
in who you are. There's going to be a lot of naysayers. There's going to be a lot of people that tell you that you're not good enough, or you're not this enough, or whatever, or you need to be here to get there. But I mean, at the end of the day, before you kick down any door, you need to build yourself up first. And so I really firmly believe now, and this isn't something that I've always thought, is that to do anything in life, to wake up every single day and have a purpose, you need to start with loving yourself. And I would just share that with anybody, because you're just as important as the next person, and you deserve the same amount of happiness as anybody else.